What's up, YouTube? So ever since I swapped my battery to the trunk and swapped in a big block with some pretty high compression, my old Camaro has been experiencing some starting issues. And I'm going to show you in this video how to alleviate these problems by running some big double lock cables from both the positive and negative cables all the way up to the starter. Cheers.
Welcome to Bluebird Enterprises.
So just a quick overview of what I bought. I bought some welding cable because it's real fine strand and carries electricity really well. And I got it in a real big diameter double aught cable or gauge. And that's because I'm going to be going, I read in the starter, if you're going over 10 feet, that you're going to want to be using double aught cable, which seems excessive, but I really want to get rid of this gremlin that I've been experiencing. And then I got this crimping tool. It was kind of, the cheapest option compared to, like crimping pliers. And then some heat shielding because these cables are gonna run kind of near my headers. And then these are cord grips, which are kind of like a fancy grommet. And I'm gonna use those in the firewall because you can tighten them and then it'll allow, it like pinches on the cable kind of and allows it not to slip in and out, and will keep it nice and held so it doesn't move and go into the headers. And then I got some metal zip ties to go around, that heat shrink wrap because it is going to be in a hot place. Normal zip ties won't work. And then I got this quick car, battery switch because it really will make it easy if I'm doing some maintenance on the car or, taking the starter out, who knows, working on the alternator. You'll just easily be able to turn it off and unpower the car to make any improvements that you want to. And it also kind of adds some security. It'll be in the trunk. Mr. Thief, if you're watching this, forget that. But that should be nice. And then this bus bar is going to go from this switch, I'm going to run a cable from this switch to this bus bar and power my subwoofer or subwoofer amplifier and speaker amplifier. Should be a good little thing, or should be a good little install. I'll throw together kind of the Amazon order of all this stuff, so if you want to replicate it, you can. Going over this, so first thing I got is a 5/16, this power distribution block has 5/16 studs on it, and I wouldn't recommend buying this one because it is kind of overkill for my application. I'd say it's more meant for, quite a few different wires, so I think a single stud bus bar would just be completely fine. And then I got these battery cables, and they're really sturdy, good quality, and you don't necessarily need 2-gauge wire if you're going a shorter path, but it's recommended in the trunk for my application. I read through the starter instructions, and that's what they said. If you're going over 10 feet that you need double aught cable, or double aught, not 2-gauge. And then here's the cord grips. So you can kind of look up online which size you're going to need, and it'll probably say in the description as to what size these cord grips will shrink down to. And these are really nice. They're waterproof, and it's like a grommet that you can kind of tailor to your application. And then I got this premium gauge or premium double aught cable, and super sturdy stuff. It's nice to see that it's made in the US. Very expensive, but what's the reliability of your car worth? I think it's worth it. And then this crimping tool is really nice. It's really versatile, and if you're just gonna be kind of a hobbyman and use it on the weekend, then that's all you need. They do make big pliers that can crimp, but this is really all you need if you're doing it once in a while. So definitely kind of an expensive order, but if you have gremlins, you have gremlins, and you got to get them worked out. So first things first, I'm going to undo these battery cables. Let's see, I'm up on the ladder. But that's going to be the first thing you want to do, is undo basically both the positive and negative. So the car isn't, hot anymore, because I'm probably going to start up at the starter while this thing's on the lift, and tackle that, and then lower it on the ground and take apart the interior. Took a little detour. So the frickin' stud in here was so short, so I kind of have some wires stacked up on the stud, so I added a little bit via changing the bolt out. So if you do have one of these Power Masters, you might want to do that. It's super easy. Just take the little back cover off and then pull the bolt out and then change it out for a longer one. At least that's what I needed to do. Alrighty, so got this old big wire off and the solenoid wire and got the new thing, or new, kind of wiring mocked up. And with that longer stud, it just fits perfectly. That lug is really large, so definitely needed the extension there. And I'm planning on putting the wires through the floor, like right here, because then it's just a short little path, to run to the stud there. And that shouldn't be a problem. It might just have a little hump in the floor, but I'm completely fine with that. If it makes the installation easier, and it's also less likely to, be close to this heat source, which is the headers. So that's my plan. So now it's time to tackle taking apart the interior. Definitely will be a little project to take the interior out of this thing. I've done a pretty good job, in my opinion, fixing this inside of this car up. I have this roll cage and subwoofer box, but roll cage and subwoofer box don't make it too much easier to take apart. So definitely going to be a little mission, but hoping for the best. I might set up the camera over there and get a time lapse to show you guys what it takes. So I got the interior out, or the interior that I need to get out, and this thing is a freaking hog, subwoofer box that I made. Seats are out, so now I'm gonna tackle, kind of pulling up this sound deadening and taking off, the screws and clips that hold this line in here, and then, start routing the new line. It's pretty straightforward. It's definitely gonna be nice having a a ground wire that's just made to be a ground for the starter, because currently I have it so it's just the ground goes to the chassis, and for some reason I just have a hunch that that's not the best way to do it. And I've read online that it's good to have two wires that go to the starter, a positive and a negative, so it's just a direct shot. So really hoping that it alleviates the problem. All right, so now that I got everything out, I'm working on getting these ready to be crimped. So what you're going to want to do is kind of size up, your terminal this length here, and, cut accordingly. Make sure you don't, cut too little, I think would be the most important thing. And then you're going to, squeeze all those wires in there. And then I'm going to use this device, and just clamps in the vise. And you just, crush it down with the vise, and then it should be nice and crimped and ready to go in there. Definitely, a nicer setup than I had with that 4 gauge. You can see these crimps on here were not great, so I think we're gonna get a better deal. And I also have this heat shrink wrap, so it should look pretty sweet when it's done. So yeah, that thing works real nice, puts a nice crimp on there, definitely nice and sturdy. So now it's time to do the shrink wrap. All right, got these all heat shrinked and crimped on here. Looks super professional, looks great. Should transfer the energy real well, so job well done. So since I'll be using those cord grips, I don't have much space down there, to clear the headers and make it a nice little cool spot. So I'm going to cut a section out of the floor right here and create a little kind of a firewall, or a little inset for the cord grips to go through like this, and then it'll allow it to go easily to the starter. So I'm going to get to work on that. So I might seem crazy cutting a piece of my floor out, but I think this will be for the best. So now I'm going to use this as a template. I'm going to use this piece as a template to get the right, shape for the piece to fill. So making progress. So a couple hours later, this came out pretty good. It's gonna be a nice pass through for those wires. Definitely a lot of work. Always hard to weld sheet metal, but I'm gonna slap some seam sealer on the welds and then put some etching primer on there and paint it, and then we're on our way to actually installing all this stuff. I actually just went with some fiberglass resin because I had to fill a hole up here. I just kind of glassed it. I feel like it's a perfectly acceptable way if you have a hole that's kind of hard to get to. It's actually kind of the best bet you have. So I think I'm gonna call it a night. Definitely made super progress on this. Pretty custom little hole there, and I'll be installing these wires tomorrow. Cheers. All right, got this stuff all painted, so it looks pretty good. I am back from a week and a half long vacation, so definitely feeling good. Gonna get back to work on this thing and get this thing all put back together. So now I'm gonna start working on, mocking up these wires and making sure I put my junction block in the right place, and also, cut the short wires that are gonna go to the little battery switch that I have. So I'm gonna get right to work on that. It should come out pretty sweet. All right, so I got a bunch of stuff made. Got this switch mounted and got some battery cables made. These definitely come out really nice when you use, the shrink wrap and those terminals that I use, because you can see they kind of have this glue on there, so it seals nicely. It's definitely could be used in a boat or anything. Got the negative battery cable made and ran, and got these ran through the car, and I'll show you down here. Let me grab this light. I've been working on getting them made for this front part, and I found this little vise that I clamped to, the lift here, and I'm gonna put this crimper in there. I got one of these made. I used a C-clamp, but the C-clamp pretty much is shot now because it's so much force. And you can see these core grips come through here. It looks really nice and clean. So I'm working on building this negative one, and then I'm gonna put some, protective heat shielding on these wires, and then they're pretty much finalized. I'm gonna wrap them in that heat shielding, and then also, tie them into maybe that hole in the transmission and the hole up here. So this is definitely coming along. I'm getting closer, and I'm looking forward to getting it all buttoned up and all the clamps inside the car, and then we should be on our way to trying this thing out and seeing how it works. So clean install, it's coming along really nice. So pretty cool little device. The owner of our house, actually, his name was Morseth, and he made knives. So this looks like some sort of old tool, and it comes apart. It has this action that you pull out. So I gotta pull this jaw out, and then I'm gonna put a piece of aluminum on here, and then also pull this out because the little crimper device that I'm using needs all this space, so it should work perfect. My frickin' lift press setup got the job done. Looks good. I'm gonna put some heat shrink wrap on here, and then take off this bolt here, the one at the end of that little piece of wire, and then put that on there, and we should be set on this. And then I just gotta run a couple wires down the engine block for, to power the car, power the MSD box. I have them all already wired up, but got to run them back down and hook them up to the main power stud, and then we should be set. All right, so I got this all installed. Came out really nice. So it's all zip tied, and then comes up to the starter, all buttons up. You can see the negative cable there. So I'm gonna try and fire this thing up and see how it sounds. It'll all be, for not or for, depending on how it sounds. So I'm excited.
Parkour!
So it sounds quite a bit better. So now I'm gonna get all this interior in here, get it all buttoned up. So like I said, came out pretty good. So I'm definitely excited to get this thing back together. And it might not have sounded that great in the video, but once I tried it again, it definitely sounded a lot better. And I'll get another kind of outro clip with this thing starting up. So it should be set. Gonna be a big project to put this back together, but I'm ready for it. Shouldn't take too long. All right, so I got my junction block all wired in. Looks good. A couple screws here and there. Fix this cable up, and that's another amplifier for the speakers. So this is looking good. I'm gonna throw this cover on that junction block, and then pin down these cables in here with some clips like these, and then we should be set. And then I just gotta put the interior in, as I said. So still quite a bit ahead of me, but we're making headway. All right, got the project done. So definitely a big job, but I think it's going to be worth it once I drive this thing around and it doesn't have all these starting issues anymore. So I'm stoked. And as you saw in the beginning of this video, if you want to follow kind of that order and go with what I bought, I didn't use everything because, you know, you kind of have an idea in your head and then things change. So definitely a lot of work, but this crimper works excellent. I would highly recommend that. And just kind of follow, getting that double aught cable if you have something in the back, or if you have your battery in the trunk, and, you know, wiring that switch if you want kind of a secondary, you know, theft device. And then you got a nice little setup. If you kind of have a higher compression engine, it'll help it start. So thanks for watching. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't, and give the video a like. Thanks, guys. Bye. Hey, thanks for stopping into the Bluebird Enterprises YouTube channel. If you like what you saw, give me a big thumbs up, and hopefully you're leaving with a bigger smile than you came in with.